What else, Dave? We got to see finally coming out of the shadows of the end of the season, a year-end presser with Bocanegra and Pineda, who gave their opinions on where the season ended up, and it felt like a gigantic excuse pile on both fronts. But what was your high-level take on that end-of-year presser? Anything from Boca's point of view that
so first of all, Bocanegra was putting a very positive spin on last year finishing fourth and going into the first round of the playoffs and getting beat. He kept saying, we finished fourth and we went into the playoffs and we lost to the eventual champs. I mean, I don't think that finishing fourth and getting, I mean, we were kind of run off the map in the first playoff game is really that positive an outcome. What do you think, Mikey Dobbs?
I was more surprised about him. Maybe, it either was telling that he actually was a big part of the decision to hire Pineda because he threw a lot of compliments that, recently Arthur Blank obviously back too in terms of Pineda being a young, bright coach with a bright future. Felt like maybe that was a little aggressive if that wasn't totally his decision and he's just, falling on the sword for the only person that can really talk soccer decisions in the clubhouse right now, right? So it felt like maybe a little bit silly for him to do that unless he really, really believes that Pineda is the coach. So
yeah, he was unequivocal that Pineda is returning, of course, and Blank has, now reiterated, I think so. I thought it was really, really interesting that, Bocanegra went immediately, not to this season, but to last season and said, look, Pineda was our coach, when we finished fourth and, got in the playoffs and only lost to the champions. But, first of all, that's not really true, right? Yeah. That, Pineda was only the coach at the very, very end, the last, third of the season or whatever. Yeah. And really the thing that got us into the fourth place was Rob Valentino and that run in the middle of the season.
I mean, my overview though was just the whole thing lacked preparation and professionalism of understanding, right? Falling on the sword is the better thing to do in this case and taking accountability.
Yeah.
Everybody that was listening that already knew there was going to be an excuse session, and it was unbelievably an excuse session from both people. And to me, like, that is not how any business should be running their business when there are obvious things that they should just say, I've got to do better. We've got to do better. And that needs to be the narrative from both of them right now. And it was not.
Definitely
not.
It
simply was not. It's like in any business, if you come out there and come out with excuses on not hitting your goals, that's not the way you approach a board meeting, presentation on why you didn't hit the goals. It's, we've got to fix this. We've got to do this better. And that was not the overarching way that this thing was constructed. And they sure as hell had plenty of time to prepare and get this right with the comms team, that hosted this thing.
Yep.
Which, by the way, they've ignored my email for us to get any sort of access to credentials or just events.
Send it again.
Let's just show up, see what happens.
Yeah. I know they're busy, but come on. I mean,
crash the party.
All we're asking as part of the, the media here that covers Atlanta United is some level of information around how we can maybe get to events to be able to talk to people. We're not asking to, be Atlanta Journal and Constitution and have total access, but we'd love to be able to figure out little ways to get a little more access to what's happening in the club.
So I thought the moment of the podcast, the moment of the press conference was our friend Felipe asked really good, the whole thing was a lot of positive. Oh, it's too bad. There were all the injuries. And Felipe finally asked a little bit of a tough question, not a really tough question. Right. And about basically, were you happy with this season? Are you content with it? And I think Carmen's going to play the clip. Here's Pineda's answer.
So I accept that. I take it. I think, again, you mentioned a little bit that you understand the how much we suffer. But at times I feel like people don't really understand how much we suffer with the injuries. And it's not just, number one is the personal aspect of it, because me seeing Brad Guzan going down for the rest of the year in a World Cup year for a guy that maybe had chances to make the World Cup, seeing a Miles Robinson, young, super talented center back, arguably the best center back the U.S. has in this moment, and losing a World Cup because of a long-term injury is very sad. Looking at Ozzy Alonso, a veteran presence, a winner, going down, I think that was very hard for me as well. But the same with Dylan Castañeda, and the same with Justin Garces and Emerson Hitman not recovering properly, and then having a re-injury, and all the things that have happened to this team affect us in a personal level. Then you go to the quality on the field. Then
okay, pause it. They affect us on a personal level, Mikey Dobbs. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you're a coach, right, the moment you start making excuses, you're in big trouble, right? It's one thing to really say that, okay, we had some injuries and the best players, were on the field, and that meant that we basically didn't have a good enough team to compete, right? That's sort of an explanation for what's going on, right? But Pineda can't really say that, right? Because we didn't have that many injuries. They happened, as we're going to talk about in a minute, one at a time, and we brought in all these great replacements. We had a squad that was good enough, even with those injuries, to make the playoffs, and even, to be honest with you, way better than that. And he knows it. Yeah. Right? And so instead of saying the actual truth, he says that it's not that not the injuries cost him players, but it affected his spirit, right? And so it was a compounded thing. That is the biggest BS excuse.
It really is, Dave. It was... Man, this was tough to watch.
He claimed that the adversity the team is facing is something he's never seen.
Yeah,
we've watched a lot of teams. We've seen teams lose really, really good players. Even Atlanta United, when we lost Joseph Martinez, right? When we had no other strikers or whatever, that was adversity, right? And even that, you're just losing a key player. This was not that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not. And as you can see, it happened, as I'm about to go through, it happened early enough in the season to deal with it in a real strategic way, which we never saw.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, this sums up the whole press conference, the moment of whatever, to just not just claim that it was the injuries, but to claim that the injuries were actually worse than you guys think they are, because it affected our spirit of our team.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Right? Yeah. That's a coach just totally making excuses.
And for any listener out there that still is saying these guys are wrong, which there are plenty out there.
Sure.
There are plenty out there that say these were devastating injuries, Dave. Like, they're not, in terms of us being able to compete. They're big injuries, and yes, tough to swallow at that moment in the season, but you've got to forge ahead, and you've got to go to plan B and go to plan C, and there was plenty of talent to do that all along.
Yeah.